Quarterbacks John Elway finally got his first Super Bowl ring. That same year, legendary NASCAR driver Dale Earnhardt finally won the Daytona 500. It seemed to be a year for top competitors to vault that final hurdle into the land of legends. And it was no different in the 1998 Bassmasters Classic.
Is a really neat lake. I think it's a great classic lake in the fact that it's not that big, but it has a lot of diversity.
Busy. High Rock is a busy lake. Lots of boat traffic, lots of docks, lots of ways to catch bass. There's a good shallow population there. There's also a good deep population of fish there.
You know, the best of both worlds. A deep water fisherman could do good, or a shallow water fisherman could do good. So it was really the perfect combination, you know, of the classic, you know, made the best fisherman win.
The last time we were there, Mark Davis won Angler of the Year and the Classic. First angler in the history of bass to do that.
Man, this is gonna be a deal. I've won Angler of the Year again. We're going to High Rock again. It was like deja vu, you know.
And I'm sure he wanted to do it. I mean, what an accomplishment that would be, since he's the only one who's done it once. But to do it a second time on a lake that he was fully capable of winning on.
A lot of people thought, well, can it happen again? But just a matter of the odds, I thought were so far against that. And Mark would receive an awful lot of extra attention.
More spectator boats, more public pressure. It's highly unlikely, I think. I don't think we'll ever see a repeat champion on the same body of water.
I thought my chances were really good based upon what I had found, you know, 4 or 5 weeks earlier. But as like I said, it all changed.
Well, High Rock Lake is traditionally thought of in the summertime as a deep offshore crankbait type lake.
Everybody expected the fish to be deep, and it was to everyone's great surprise that there were hardly any deep fish caught.
It just totally caught me off guard that the deep water bite could be that off.
The fish all moved shallow in that tournament. I mean, the deep guys just didn't do worth the hoot. You know, the fish moved to the bank, so it gave the shallow guys the advantage.
The big concentrations of those deeper fish that I had located were gone.
Certainly, you would not have picked Denny Brauer as a favorite.
You know, Denny had probably the worst tournament of his career in '95 there.
He's qualified for 13 Bassmaster Classics, and I don't think he's skunked 2 days in all those years.
First 2 days he zeroed, I remember that. He went out the last day, and I think he caught 1 keeper.
2-9, this is an all-time record for you.
Yeah, it really is. One thing about it, you can never have a worse tournament than this. I found out what the bottom's about.
So he wasn't real charged, I don't think, about the Classic going back to High Rock. I remember him saying, if I never see this mud hole again, it'll be too soon for me. But as history will show, he certainly grew fond of High Rock as it provided him with his biggest career moments.
The Classic is a tournament that is hard to win, but it's very easy to lose.
Denny's been around for quite a few years, and he's been very successful.
He had won qualifying events in the invitationals, Mega Bucks, Angler of the Year. You know, I mean, there was nothing left for Denny but the Classic.
I mean, he'd come so close in different classics over the years and let it slip through his fingers.
I think he'd finished everywhere in the top 5 in the Classic over the years, but first.
To a lot of people, maybe my career was complete, but to me, it wasn't complete unless I won that one event.
He burns to win. He hates to lose as much as anybody I know, or maybe more. And, you know, he's a staunch believer in working hard towards your goals.
I think he'd worked so hard through the years that he knew eventually
he was going to do one of these things.
You want guys who have been there and worked so hard for their career in fishing to win the Classic.
Everyone knew that he was capable. And those of us who knew him well knew that it killed him that he hadn't won it.
I'd answered the question so many times. Is this the Classic you're going to win? How does it feel never to have won a Classic and have done everything else? And that starts to weigh on you.
The 1998 Bassmasters Classic Yearbook is brought to you by Busch Beer, Chevy Trucks, the most dependable, longest-lasting trucks on the road, and the Skeeter Performance Fishing Boats.
Bass going out west was a wonderful thing because most people don't know this, but our largest membership state was California.
Adding the Western Tour made it a truly national tour. And I could truly say, you know, this is a national sport.
Before that, the Western fishermen generally moved to Texas or points east, so they would be closer to the BASS tournament waters.
That's where I'm from. I mean, born and raised Northern California. A lot of the guys that compete from the West are here because of me. And for those guys to be able to come out here from California and succeed on this circuit is the true growth of this sport.
When we went west and offered a tournament trail out there, it gave those guys an opportunity to, to compete and get a chance to come back east and fish the Classic.
5 of those anglers qualified to come to the Bassmaster Classic, and one of them, Mike Reynolds, did quite well.
It's tough to make the Bassmasters Classic. I think it's tougher to make it on the West Coast than it is on the East Coast. But I'm out here, so that's just, you throw that in there, and then people probably be sending me letters.
I think there's more eyes looking at Western fishermen that year than there's ever been in the sport of bass fishing. You start realizing that there's a lot of people watching you and want you to do well because you're representing their part of the world.
I look over and my whole family's sitting right there, and I lost it. I mean, I lost it at the first day of the Classic. I started crying as they were backing me into the stinking water, which is ridiculous for me, but it was just that big of a deal for me.
It was so exciting making the Classic in '98. I mean, to me, it was a dream come true. I called Gary Klein up when I qualified for the Classic, and I said, Gary, what should I do, He goes, you know what you should do? He said, just have fun. He said, and he was right. That's the way to enjoy your first Classics. Just go have fun.
I do my little dance on stage, and that got me more press and media than pretty much anybody in the Classic outside of the winner. Hey, it's marketing. What the hell are you supposed to do?
The guys don't give those Western guys as much credit as they deserve just because they're not familiar with them. They don't compete against them. If they competed against them all the time like I used to, they would know how good fishermen they are.
And that's the biggest thing. These guys want to see you come out on the trail and prove yourself and show that you can catch a fish.
There might have been a little bit they didn't like giving up their Classic spots to the Western guys, but when they come in and said, hey, boys, we can play your game too, I think it opened a lot of eyes and earned a lot of respect for those fishermen.
Hands down, probably the one I had the most respect for is Mike Reynolds. Mike's a hell of a fisherman.
Got the camera boat on me the first day, which was awesome. Just out of nowhere, they showed up, and I started catching fish. So, pulled 3 or 4 fish on camera, got put on TV because of that.
Yeah, I think he became a bit of a media darling, too, during that tournament because he was such a good interview. Mike did a great job, and he handled himself so well for his first, being in the Classic. He looked like one of the veterans.
Came into the weigh-in the second day and just really blew the lid off the place.
15 pounds, 12 ounces.
And Mike does it and is currently in second place.
Got to hear the roar of a lot of people, and it was one of the most unbelievable feelings I've ever had. Got to go to the press conference, got to be the man for about 5 minutes and sit next to Rick Clunn and George Cochran and Denny Brauer and Randy Blockett, and somebody was out of place, and we know who that was.
I mean, my God, we're talking about the Bassmaster Classic. It carries enough pressure of its own. I think maybe he might have been a little overwhelmed.
And came in and ended up 4th place by 1 ounce out of 3rd place. It really stung me a little bit because I'm a competitor, and I was 1 fish away from 2nd. The win was out of the question, but I was 1 fish away from 2nd. So that sums up to 3 days. It was an awesome 3 days, and it's something I'll never forget.
In the 98 Classic, George Cochran and Randy Block had found themselves basically in the same part of the water. And really, by having to share it with each other, they might have cost themselves, a real shot at overtaking Brauer and winning the Classic.
George is a very nice, gentle man off the water. George, when he gets on that water, changes. He goes into, this is my tournament, this is my lake, and I am gonna win. Hey, he's won 2 Bassmasters Classics. There's only a handful of guys that can say that.
The first day of the tournament, George was in the first flight and I was in the second flight. And the cover that we were fishing was real isolated targets. There'd be a laydown log on the river, and then another quarter-mile left there'd be another laydown. George was like, in front of me just picking the fish off, and he had that 17-pound stringer, and I was like, fishing for crumbs behind him.
First day of the Classic, I had this big string of fish, and I thought I had all these spots to myself. Well, the second day,
we flip-flopped, and I got out and I caught a 15, almost 16-pound stringer. We just flip-flopped the run, and we didn't really know, who was fishing over what until then.
I remember there was a little hostility when they both figured it out. I think more so on George's part.
At first, I got mad. It really made me mad to see somebody fishing the same water after me leading it the first day.
I mean, neither one of us were thrilled. I mean, I wasn't thrilled that he was fishing up there, and he wasn't thrilled I was fishing up there, but that was just the way it was, and there's nothing either one of us could have done about it.
You'd be surprised when you take a 35,000-acre impoundment that the same guys find the same fish. They do in every tournament. The issue is whose fish are they? And if there's not enough area to split, then that's where the conflict starts.
The worst thing you could do is have an argument on the water with another contender, and then you're spiteful to one another and trying to cut each other off, and that's no way to operate. You don't do as well. If you work together, then everybody's gonna just be 100% better off.
But then he came and confronted me after that day and told me that he'd been fishing at the same places I was fishing at different times.
And I just wanted to let him know that, I'd been fishing up there because I didn't want him to see me up there the second day and just think I came in on his water because, he was the tournament leader. So that was the main concern in my mind.
Maybe because I won 2 Classics, I didn't get real upset. We're still friends today, and that's just the way it happened. We shared the water, and if he'd had it all to himself or I'd had it all to myself, I really believe that I could have won my 3rd Classic because of that.
I guess that's something we'll never know, whether they, if one would have had it to himself, would he have won it? Possibly.
But that's the beauty of the Classic, is it's not about ifs and buts, it's about the guy who does it.
Fortunately for Denny, that's the way that, it unfolded for us up that river, but that was just, that's part of fishing, and there's nothing you can really do about that. And we both had a good finish, we both had a top 5 finish in the Classic, and, I think anybody would be happy with that.
A lot of people don't know that Denny Brauer was another one of those guys that crawled out from under a hard rock. I mean, he was in the cement masonry business. That's where he did it with his hands. And
he started in a bass club, so he had his roots in Nebraska, and from an area that I don't consider to be a fishing area. I mean, to play football up there, but not much in the way of fishing. But he made it as a professional bass fisherman.
And of course, you know the rest of the story. He's got a son who's come behind him, who's done extraordinarily well, and they all got great supporting systems with their wives and families. So it's just another one of those all-American stories of a man who had a dream and was willing to pay the price.
I was really fighting for survival early in my career. I really had to do well to make it to the next event. I was on a real tight budget, obviously, and there weren't many events back in those days, so you couldn't really afford to have too many bad events.
We gave it a 3-year period, if I remember right, and we had decided if he didn't
make it good by the end of the third year, that he'd go back to his bricklaying business that he had at the lake.
I didn't know if I was going to make it. I really didn't. I was hoping I would because I enjoyed it so much. And I guess when I won the first tournament, that kind of solidified the career, so to speak. I'd qualified for a couple of classics up till that point, but you know, that didn't really guarantee anything. And we're in a sport that I don't know if there are any guarantees. I think it's a career where you continually have to produce.
He made it as a professional bass fisherman, even to the point of his son is a perfect carbon copy of him, and who won a tournament, Chad. So they've become a great 1-2 team as far as professional fishermen.
We all were very excited when Chad made his very first classic. It was just a day that we had all dreamed of, and Chad had worked very hard for. That was one of his main goals.
To get to the Classic's a big, big deal for anybody, not only for them, but for their fans and their sponsors. The whole package is huge, and to see him get there was very, very gratifying from my aspect.
It finally worked out where both of us got into that 98 Classic, and we spent our 6 days of allotted pre-practice time really working together. We don't fish together out of the same boat and work the same waters, but we compare notes.
We practiced as individual contestants, as competitors of each other, and of course we compared notes, obviously, but no, he was fishing to win and I was fishing to win.
And actually during that pre-practice period, I had the better 6 days and felt like I had probably the better water going into the tournament.
There's definitely competitiveness between the two of them. I really think Chad likes nothing better than to beat his dad, but I feel that Denny always is happy when Chad does beat him.
You need some more of the Pro Model jigs for tomorrow? They're $50 a piece.
Put it on my tab.
On your tab?
That's the best thing about having a dad that's a pro. You can get a big tab.
Listen to that, huh?
I'll take that.
They're already starting to look around hunting for it.
They love to compete. I can't see Chad doing anything else. I don't think he would be happy unless he was competitively fishing.
Oh, we both want to beat each other big time. You know, we treat it as, you know, we treat it as a business because that's what it is for us. We're in business together, just like the Earnhardts are in Earnhardt Incorporated, and it benefits everybody if we both do good. But if we have a particular chance for one of us to really accomplish something big, then we focus everyone's attention on that.
The 1998 Bassmasters Classic Yearbook is brought to you by Chevy Trucks, the most dependable, longest-lasting trucks on the road. Berkeley, catch more fish. And Triton, a new breed of fishing boats by Earl Bentz.
I rode with Denny on that final day, and I watched this thing unfold, and I remember thinking then that I was seeing something special.
You know, he was dialed in from the get-go on that one. There was no denying Denny Brauer in 1998.
When he came in the second day, and you hate to admit this when you're a competitor, but I knew for all practical purposes it was over. It was his tournament to win. And
Denny Brauer was fishing shallow, he was fishing wood, he was fishing real smart. He had a stretch of water up the river that had wood on it, and you know, when I seen it on TV, I just asked myself, why weren't you there?
And Denny was doing something different from everybody else. He was flipping a new bait made by Strike King called a tube.
Fished a super shallow pattern, fished as efficiently as anybody's ever fished the Classic. Introduced the fishing world to the use of a tube jig in shallow water on a flipping stick.
It was a deal to where I had several areas found, made the right moves at the right time, and had a strategy that paid off real good as far as crowd control. And
Brauer was able to make the spectator boats part of his strategy. He had to factor that in his approach to the docks, where he shut down, and knew that that was going to be an element that he had to deal with.
Everything worked really according to the plan I had. And I think the previous times there helped educate me on what I needed to do to win that event.
No lead is big enough to be really comfortable, especially having the George Cochran right on your heels. Already had won 2 classics, and Denny and George are friends, and I'm sure they picked at one another about it. The last day we were sitting side by side, we wished each other well, and of course I felt like
that it could go either way.
I knew that he was going to have an exceptional stringer, and I had a lot of confidence that I had enough fish to win that event. And I really felt that I was not going to get beat, and that nothing bad was going to happen at that particular time.
Everybody knew Denny wasn't going to fold under pressure, that if there were any fish left there for him to catch, he was going to catch them.
One thing you can count on, he was not going out there to try and protect the lead or to protect his position. He was going out to win. That's one thing that Brauer does. He fishes to win.
Well, I look at every tournament that way, win, lose, or draw. I'm going to try to do everything I can and accept the results, however it ends up being.
At the Classic, what they do basically is if on the last day weigh-in, they try to hold the last 4 or 5 anglers that they think's got a shot to win at the end.
I don't know if you ever totally know until you get in and you start hearing word of mouth and they start staging the boats and all of that. Of course, you hear the rumors and all of that. I really felt personally, though, that when I caught my 5th fish, that it was over.
Right at that last weigh-in, it was tough for me because I was one of the first guys to come through the Coliseum that day, so I had to sit down in the bottom where a lot of the other competitors sit with the press, and I purposely stayed away from where the wives and of course my mother was sitting.
That's, you know, the wives always hear all these people coming in saying, oh, this guy's got this and this guy, but I've just kind of learned from experience that you don't really listen to too many people. You just kind of have to wait until the end comes to see if, you know, what the result is.
Outside the Coliseum there in Greensboro, Denny and I were the last 2 boats to weigh in over there, and I sort of knew what Denny had because I heard he had a pretty good sack, and I went back and talked to him in the boat, and he was just beaming. I mean, he was lit up. I mean, it was just unbelievable. And
sitting there waiting, knowing that they didn't know what was going to happen, was you know, pretty trying on me. I wanted to run up there and say, you know, here in a few minutes, Dad's going to ride in. He's going to be the last one and win this thing.
And it appears Denny Brauer has an outstanding limit. But Dewey Kendrick and the scales will be the final judge.
The new champion, 16 pounds.
Denny Brauer has done it.
Denny was due. I mean, he was due to win the Classic.
Seeing Denny win a Classic on his 16th try gives us all a little bit of hope.
Anytime he's up there, it's like having a bright light shining on the sport because he just emanates a glow.
You know, there was absolutely no doubt that Denny Brauer deserved to win the Classic.
By golly, I did it. And, you know, the weight was lifted. The monkey left the back, and I'm glad it happened.
1998 was a breakthrough year, not only for Denny Brauer, but for the sport of professional bass fishing. Not only did Denny hold his own on the David Letterman Show, he also became the first angler to be featured on the Wheaties Box. Not bad for a bricklayer from Nebraska. For Bassmaster's Classic Yearbook, I'm Ron Franklin.